If you're a PlayStation owner, then there's a chance that you may have heard of or played Astro's Playroom, which released back in 2020. That game was a solid platformer that actually utilized the features of the DualSense, making you move your controller in all sorts of directions. Fast forward 4 years later and we have the sequel, Astro Bot. Going into this, I knew I was going to enjoy it, but once I actually started playing the game, it was apparent that Team Asobi put so much effort into this and really tried to make the levels more in depth than ever before, and in my opinion, it definitely showed. So when you take a look at this game, you may just skip right past it because it looks like a kid's game, and honestly, it pretty much is. Same goes for Astro's Playroom. And if the fact that this game is geared more towards kids deters you from giving this game a chance, then you'd be missing out big time. We're in an era of gaming where we don't get many platformers that are just fun. Back in the day on previous gens, especially the PS2, we got tons of fun platformers that mix different mechanics together to make a captivating experience. From Jak and Daxter to Ratchet and Clank, Sly Cooper, among many others, those games had platforming at their core, but were also just fun. And in many ways, Astro Bot brings me back to that time when I was a kid playing those older titles. At its core, it's still just a platformer, but like the other games I just mentioned, it does a great job in incorporating other mechanics into it to make it stand out in comparison to Astro's Playroom. To start with, this game does have a story, but as you probably expected, it's very simple. You crash land after your ship, which is a PlayStation 5, is destroyed, and you go on a quest to find your missing friends and put the ship back together. Along the way, you'll find the different ship pieces while sending the other bots back to the crash site where the ship landed. That's literally it in regards to the story, which I thought was perfectly fine as a game like this didn't really need to have a plot, but it was still cool that there was an actual reason for you to be collecting these parts and going through the levels. It's not like we were just doing it just to do it. To nobody's surprise, the real highlight of this game is the gameplay. If you played Astro's Playroom, then you already know what to expect, but what makes this game so much better is just the level design. Yes, a lot of what you're doing is the same. You're collecting coins, fighting enemies, and jumping all over the place to reach the end of the stage, but it's the variety of all those elements within each world that makes this game so much fun. You pretty much never play the exact same stage twice. Sure, there'll be stages that are comprised of the same sort of weather conditions, but it's still not the same. Having each world be different than the previous made a huge difference for a game when you're just repeating the same movements over and over. To make things even better, the bots you find are themed after PlayStation characters from the past and present. Some of them are smaller characters like the monkeys from Ape Escape, while others are more notable like Kratos from God of War. I thought making the bots character theme was a great idea, as it incentivized me to find all the bots in the game. Like I wanted to see how many different characters from each franchise were there and who exactly they were. But it doesn't stop there. Team Asobi took it a step further and gave a couple of custom levels specifically geared around certain characters. For example, my favorite stage in the game is the world designed around Nathan Drake from Uncharted. Unless you're new to PlayStation or video games in general, then I'm sure you know who this character is and where he's from. So based off of that, you can imagine how his level should be designed. A jungle with you shooting enemies. And that's exactly how it was. Right from the beginning, when Nate tosses his gun to you, this entire level was fantastic. The shooting of the gun was actually really fluid and fast, which surprised me because that is not the core mechanic of this game at all. Even more, you don't have any ammo as you will just reload automatically after you shoot enough bullets. I know you're only shooting enemies with what feels like a BB gun, but man, it just feels great to do. It's hard to describe, but everything in this level just worked. When not shooting, you're jumping across bodies of water on top of vehicles, swinging or climbing up ropes, or solving puzzles. Everything that you would expect to find in an Uncharted game is found in this level. To top it off, you face a boss and go through a set piece that serves as the icing on the cake. There's other character themed levels in this game, but in my opinion, this was the most fun. If you played this, what was your favorite level? Speaking of the combat, it was pretty impressive. To attack, all you had to do was press a button, but it's the actual fights themselves which is where the skill came in. So many times I would die against the easiest of enemies just by not paying attention. This game isn't hard in the slightest, but if you jump and attack or move at the wrong angle, you'll get hit and die instantly. This applies to not just the small enemies, but the boss fights too. Most of the time in these levels, they're capped off by a boss fight, which I thought was really cool. Now I'm not gonna lie, not every boss fight was all that. Some were too easy and others could have had a little bit more to them. But overall, they were all enjoyable. In these fights, you have to use whatever gadget you receive in the level, plus your basic combat skills to win. I thought this was a great way of mixing up the gameplay by forcing the player to remember the mechanics that got them to this point, instead of just abandoning what you learned from the start. What's even cooler is that the bosses had multiple phases, most of them incorporating some of the smaller enemies too. They would pop out at random moments, temporarily distracting you from the attacks from the actual boss. It doesn't seem like much at times, but these extra enemies would cause me to have a momentary lapse in concentration and have my head spinning, which led to me dying. Combine that with just getting the correct timing down on the attacks, and you will die multiple times to the bosses. It's inevitable. A moment ago, I did mention gadgets and outside of the world variety. That is the aspect of the game that helps to keep things fresh. There's a nice rotation of gadgets that you get to use, which are randomized based on the level you're in, but they're all designed to help you get through that specific level. What's cool is that you get a full taste test of each one and are able to quickly gravitate towards one over the other. Personally, not counting the character themed weapons, my favorite gadget was the boxing gloves. These boxing gloves are more like slinkies attached to your arms and allow you to punch and punch and punch some more. Wearing these made me feel like I was Floyd Mayweather in his prime. Every time I used them in a level, I actually got excited because spamming the left and right triggers constantly never gets old. But again, to my surprise, these gloves are for more than attacking. You can swing across and up to platforms or pull objects to you as well. Just having these gadgets be so diverse makes their usability increase. Again, just like other weapons, most of the time you don't have ammo that you need either. And if you do need it, it's pretty much right next to you at all times. Honestly, this game is damn near perfect. I only have two small gripes that I wanted to address, and these really aren't a big deal at all. First off, I thought they wasted an entire character level in the fourth world. All the other character themed levels are pretty fun, but this one just didn't hit. I'm not even sure what the character's name is here. Roko, I think? Maybe because I didn't play it back when it released, but the devs could have used literally any other character for this level. It could have been because of how the character was made, as this was a great idea to get more out of the DualSense, but if I had to point back to one world I would never play again, it would be that. And it's a shame because that's a character world, which is supposed to be one of the highlights of the game. The next thing is just the exclusion of Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts characters. Now before you get on me and say, it's not up to them, Square Enix refused to let them be included. I know, but I'm sure they could have paid them a certain amount of money to get them in there. Most of the time decisions like this come down to money, so I'm willing to guess that was the reason. Especially considering that most of Square's titles released first on PlayStation anyways, so it makes no sense why they weren't included. It was really weird not to see characters like Sora, Riku, Cloud, Sephiroth, Tifa, etc. as actual character themed bots. Take it a step further and they could have had entire themed worlds around these characters. A Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy world would have looked absolutely beautiful for this game. Now of course it wouldn't be my place to assume what happened behind the scenes, but I just hope the team tried their hardest to get these characters in the game, but it was mainly on Square in regards to why they weren't included. Unlike some of these other games that released recently, I didn't encounter any bugs or issues when playing this game. My entire playthrough I didn't notice any drop frames or graphical errors as each level played and looked incredible. What I thought was impressive was how the game didn't drop many frames, especially considering all the stuff that would be going on within some of these set pieces. A lot of these bosses are very large and take up a lot of the screen, so the game not dropping frames was a pleasant surprise. Now you may be thinking, okay, you mentioned that you go through these levels, but do you actually collect anything? And that would be a great question. I did say that you collect coins all across each world, which serve as the game's currency, but what do you use them for? These in-game coins are used to purchase treasures from what is pretty much a claw machine. Here you get different things like controller colors, bot animations, and bot skins that can all be worn or seen at any time. I thought all these rewards are pretty good, as it made me want to wear different skins or interact with various bots at the crash site to see what animation they had. I could imagine that figuring out what to spend your coins on was definitely an issue, but the devs did a great job at giving the player a reason to collect as many coins as possible. What I thought was kind of weird is why after hitting the machine a couple times you would just crush a soda. Maybe it's because they were trying to mimic what it's like to miss grabbing something in the machine. I'm not sure, to be honest. In regards to the actual character bots themselves, I thought Astro Bot did a great job of representing notable characters from each generation. From Crash, to Jack, to Nathan Drake, there will be at least one character that you recognize from a past title. I loved how finding these bots lined up with what their games were actually about too. For example, you find Crash and Jak and Daxter in a jungle themed world, which makes sense if you actually play their games. This was just one example, but finding other characters in areas like that just showed the amount of thought and effort that was put into every piece of this game. One thing I forgot to mention is that there are puzzle pieces that you can collect within the levels alongside the bots as well. These are hidden in secret areas, and once collected you can bring them back to the crash site, where you'll end up rebuilding the structures that actually house all the skins and items I mentioned earlier. Just like the bots, you're able to keep track of these, so you'll always be able to find them every time you replay a level. The last thing I wanted to mention were the shape button levels. The game is organized by galaxies, and within the galaxy there are worlds that you have to complete. However, floating around the worlds are mini worlds themed after the shape buttons on the controller. These worlds are actually where the small amount of challenge for this game lies. It doesn't matter what the shape is, these levels all took some skill. The challenge all came from the level design. In these levels you had to time your jumps and attacks perfectly or else you were gonna die. And trust me, I died a lot. These are possible to be completed, but out of all the worlds you encounter, these specific ones you might have to lock in for. There's no way around it. Just brace yourself for some pain. Overall, Astro Bot is an astounding platformer that acknowledges PlayStation's past while not necessarily doing anything that hasn't been done before. With almost no frame drops or graphical issues, this game was a complete blast to play right from the beginning. To put it simply, Astro Bot is just fun. So for those reasons, I'm going to give this game a 9.5. When making this review, I tried looking at this game from a variety of angles to find flaws, but I really couldn't. This game is so simplistic and easy to pick up, I think pretty much anybody will enjoy it. In an era of gaming where we don't get games like these much anymore, this was definitely a breath of fresh air. I would recommend buying this immediately, and if you do want to wait for a price drop, then don't wait long because this game is worth every penny. Did you play Astro Bot? If so, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to drop a like, subscribe, or check out one of my other reviews right here.